Hi everyone, and welcome again to my audiovisual channel. I am Gabriela Handal, a draftsman and the host of the show, A Conversation About Art. During each episode, I look for the meaning of art and beauty through conversations with colleagues in different artistic fields. Today I bring you episode 43, and I will have this conversation with printmaker Jake Ingram, the first printmaker that I'm talking to for the podcast. If you'd like to support this podcast, liking and sharing this video is a great way to do it, and so is subscribing. These forms of support are immediate and have no additional cost. If you want to support the podcast with money, that is also welcome, and you can do so by purchasing my drawings directly from my website, buying stuff I make from eBay, buying prints of my drawings, or leaving a tip. The links for these things are in the show notes. Thank you very much for watching and or listening, and enjoy the episode. Okay, Jake Ingram, welcome to my podcast, A Conversation About Art. You are episode 43. Please tell our listeners and viewers who you are and what you do.
Well, thank you, Gabriela, for having me.
Of course.
My name is Jake Ingram. I am a collaborative printer and printmaker based in Knoxville, Tennessee. I am currently the studio manager over at a small business called Native Maps, where I design maps, print, customer service, stuff like that. And then when I'm not doing that, I'm in my own studio that I own. I own my own print shop called Jackalope Editions. And there I collaborate with artists from local, like in the Knoxville area, and then also across the country and stuff like that. So.
Okay. I think it's pretty cool that you're the first printmaker, or, I mean, because, in the Academy, we often, lots of artists who don't generally do printmaking got to try it out and everything, but I think you're strictly strictly a printmaker the way that, like, I draw, and other people are painters, and other people are photographers, so I think that's pretty cool. Oh, and sculptors, of course. Yeah. Okay. So I would like to know about your relationship with printmaking. So, how long have you been doing it? And let's start with how long have you been doing it?
I think I took my first printmaking class when I was an undergraduate at East Tennessee State University, and that was, I think, fall of 2009. And okay. I was like, this is the worst class I've ever taken. It was an intro to print class, and we were doing just etching. Mm-hmm. And I was like, my hands are always dirty. I was like, this is for the birds. So I was like, oh, I swear I'll never take another printmaking class again. Uh-huh. And then I had two friends. They were sisters, Mira and Lakin Bridges, and they were like, Jake, you're crazy. They're like, you love to draw. You're going to take this class where you draw on rocks. Mm-hmm. And you're going to take it with this guy named John Hilton, and you're going to love it. And I was like, nah, I don't know. And I did, and I totally fell in love. John was an amazing teacher. He really kind of showed me the other side of printmaking that I didn't really see in that intro class, which was like the chemistry behind it and stuff like that. But by the time I took that class, I think it was like spring of 2011, I was about to graduate, and I was like, this is a cool little trick I've got. I'm going to keep in my back pocket. Mm-hmm. And then I went to the Academy where I met you. And then I totally kind of fell back into it. It's really because of Jessica Augier. She was like, you need to like get back to the print shop. She's like, you love printmaking. You just don't know it. And I was like, no, I don't love it. And then
she would say that.
Yeah. And I totally fell back in love. And then yeah, I ended up graduating like you with a degree in drawing on the printmaking track. So, but.
And then okay. So the first time that that was 2009. You said the intaglio class that you didn't like.
Yeah.
About how old were you?
19.
Okay.
I was super young and super cheeky. I was like, I'm going to be like this big New York artist, blah, blah, blah. I was like at 19, I was like pretty cocky, and I was just like, I'm just going to draw all the time, and graphite's the way it to be, and yeah. Mm-hmm. And then I totally had this like revelation once I took litho. So lithography is like my primary medium. So.
Okay. And what you did in between when you weren't doing the when you weren't getting into so when that when you did the lithography and but you said you were towards the end of your undergraduate, and then when you took it up again at the academy, so like in between you were just drawing,
Um,
would you
yes
say?
and no.
Uh-huh.
So like I graduated from East Tennessee State University in 2012. And I
Mm-hmm.
took a year off and I worked at a gas station.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was at this gas station and I was kind of trying to decide like what do I do for the rest of my life?
Right.
And I was working third shift. So I ended up drawing but also making some small sculptures out of like lottery tickets, and I was like drawing on the back of receipts and stuff like that. And because I was on third shift, I was there by myself. So it was like a way for me to pass time.
What's
And
third shift?
third shift is like it's 11 p.m. to 7 a.m.
Oh, okay.
So
I
like
didn't know it was called third shift. Okay.
that's what they called it at the gas station. So I always refer to it as third shift, but it's like the late night. It's like those poor people that you always see who are like mopping the floors. So that was me for a year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so yeah, like in that year, I was like really kind of evaluating like what I wanted from life and how was like what was my next step. And for me, I was like I want to go to New York, and I really wanted to learn more drawing skills and more about the figure. And
Mm.
so obviously the academy was like the best fit.
Yeah.
And so that's how I ended up there. Also because Jessica had gone there, and she went to ETSU as well. So we had that connection. Um, yeah. And so, I mean, in the interim, I was doing all that, sculpture, drawing, just kind of trying weird things out.
Mm.
It was really hard for me just because of the schedule, because like I would get off in the morning and just go straight to bed and then sleep all
Yeah.
day and like 2 hours and have to be back at work. And like, this isn't working.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Those I know that shift. I mean, or at least I thought I knew the shift as like the graveyard shift, which is just like at night, you know, from
Yes.
night to until morning. And so I don't know if that's like call center lingo, but I mean, I kind of knew it from the call center, like the term for those times. Like I used to work from 4 in the afternoon until midnight, and like that was the shift that I really liked. But it's not the same, obviously. Um, but anyway, like yeah, it's like yeah, you have the entire day off, and it's like well, sort of,
No. I was
yeah.
like, we scheduled you 2 days off in a row. I was like, no, you scheduled me one day off because like one day I'm sleeping. So
That's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like it totally messes one up. Okay. Okay. So the intaglio class that you took, did you? Why did you take it? Were you curious? Somebody sweet talked you into doing it, or
it
you
was an
needed
elective.
a credit or something?
I just needed the credit. And really, like, I didn't know what I was doing or getting into.
Mm,
I don't think I'd really ever heard of printmaking before that class. And then, I mean, the class was really good. It was taught really well. And I learned more about paper and, like creating an edition and stuff like that. But I just didn't quite, nothing was really clicking. And it
mm,
wasn't really until John's class. And John really just like, he just explained it in a way that made a lot of sense to me.
mm,
He's like a fantastic printmaker. Like he's a great lithographer. He's a great teacher. Like I mean, he's adjunct, and he was
mm.
like this incredible force that like kind of came into my life, and he really changed the way I looked at printmaking. I ended up taking the follow-up class afterwards my senior year, and it was supposed to be on monoprints, and instead I think I did all litho, but I did like, oh, I'm doing one print, but I'm going to pull it as one color, and that's a monoprint. So I ended up back in litho. So
Okay, so do you think if that do you think if that teacher would have taught the intaglio class, do you think you might have been able to get into it?
that's a good question. No, I think at 19 I was like like I said, I was pretty cocky at 19. I was like, yeah, I'm going to be this person, and then yeah, I think I still would have hated Intaglio. And
Okay.
now, like, I will say this: I do like Intaglio. I love it, and I'm like, I had a great professor at the academy, Frederick Mershimer. He's incredible, um, and what he taught me at the academy was also very valuable. I think I've had like a really good line of strong printmaking professors. Like I had John Hilton, I had Fred Mershimer, and then I went to Tamarind Institute for lithography, and I had Brandon Gunn, who was the education director. And then after completing the printer training program, I was selected to be an apprentice along with Christine Adams. And so the two of us we studied under master printer Valkyrie Rimling. So like I've had like four really, really good people who just like I don't know, giving me this knowledge that I don't know, like I just like want to go out and be like, let me give you like the good word, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, just kind of like door to door Jehovah's Witness, like here's the
Mm-hmm,
printmaking. Have you heard about our Lord and Savior?
mm-hmm.
Praise be to our mother June Wayne. I'm nerdy about it. I love printmaking, so
Okay. But I guess, yeah. I mean, I'm trying to like, mm, I wonder what changed from the intaglio class to the lithography class. Do you think that it was the medium itself? Do you think it was lithography itself? So then, do you think if you would have had like a lame lithography teacher, you still would have been enticed by lithography in that case?
I think yes. I think for
Okay.
me, litho, there's something about it because it's like so chemical and it's like there's chemistry involved. And I really liked chemistry in high school, but I always felt like I wasn't smart enough to like figure out what I could do as a career with chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
But there was something about like the chemistry and litho that it was easy for me to understand. And what I knew from high school, it all transferred. And I could sit down and like understand like the reactions happening. And then I feel like once I got to Tamron and like they actually went into more depth about like
Mm.
the really things that are happening, and you understand like the stone is going through this chemical change, and you're just, oh, I don't know, something about that. That's what clicked for me. And I think if the professor hadn't been as good as he was, I think I still would have loved it because it was drawing.
Yeah.
So like drawing is, I mean, both my undergraduate degree and my graduate degree are in drawing, and I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I love drawing, but drawing on rocks, now that's a little
Uh,
different.
okay, but so I mean, intaglio is on the metal
Mhm.
stuff, isn't it? I
Yes,
mean,
copper.
isn't that one arguably also a chemical relationship, a chemical reaction thing? And I mean, I'm sure that lots of people would still argue that it's also drawing, for example. So perhaps it's not just chemistry and drawing. So what else do you think there can be? What else could there be in there?
I mean, I think litho, the magic behind litho, so I would agree. Intaglio does have, it looks like drawing. It can function as a drawing. There is chemistry involved. But litho is magic because litho can look like anything. So
Mm-hmm.
it can mimic etching, screen print, um, mono printing. I mean, it can be any of the printmaking forms, but it can also be painting, drawing, sculpture. I mean, there's nothing that it can't do. And you just
Mm-hmm.
like have to like that's the magic behind it. It
Mm-hmm.
like it does it all, and then it's like this really exciting thing, like cool print. And you're just like, ah! And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden I have like a drawing that looks like a charcoal drawing, but it's a lithograph. And someone might be like, oh, I love that charcoal drawing. And like,
You're like, haha.
exactly. And I think just the medium itself. That's why it's so exciting. And I mean, like I said, I do love intaglio and I respect the medium. And
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, litho always has my heart.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'll go back to the
Okay.
rocks.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's fair. Because, for example, I mean, I don't have, I don't think I did intaglio. I just saw people doing it. I have a vague idea of what you do to make intaglio prints.
Mhm.
Um, and the end resulting prints are cool and everything, but I personally I can see how, for example, drawing on the because I actually experienced drawing on the lithostones.
Yeah.
I can see how that specifically is much more seductive than drawing on the metal because it's like I can only imagine like in nightmares the sound that drawing on the metal thing with some pointy. It's like you might as well scratch your nails on a chalkboard. It's like that is just like that by default. Just thinking about it is like repellent to me. But then you have like the oil pencil. It's oil for the pencil, right?
Greece.
The grease pencil, and like the porous surface of
Hmm.
the polished porous surface of the stone, and it's like the color is like special and it's like soft and it's like you were saying it's very malleable in terms of what you want to the image that you want to draw because I was able to do, I mean, not ridiculously detailed or anything because I mean, I think if I would have done it long enough I would have probably tried to get more detailed work to make prints. But I mean, I got some pretty detailed, precious things, and it's cool that it has that capability. to be able to like receive that and then print it onto the paper. And yeah, like the whole repetition process after you make your drawing, and kind of like you have your rock and you take care of it. I know you don't like them to be called rocks, but okay, you have your stone, and it's like because I mean I had two of them in the academy, and I named them and stuff.
Yeah.
And you have to clean them and take care of them, and like I can see the whole like a relationship, not just with the medium of printmaking, but then with the objects, your tools that you use for making things.
Yeah.
So like for me, like that, I can totally understand why, at least in that aspect, like what do you think about that?
I mean, it's total love affair. Every stone has its personality, and you're just like, as you print with it, you get to know the stone, and you're just like, oh, this is. And all my stones are named after people who have given them to me. I'd say about my stone library, I think I have like 16 stones now, and most of them have been donated. Yeah, most of them have been donated, or like I've ended up like getting them for a really good deal, or it's like someone who's like, hey, I know this person. So it's like kind of having these relationships with like all my friends again,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
in stone form.
Yeah.
But yeah, every stone has its personality, but there is nothing like drawing on that surface, especially when you get to like a 220 grit and so fine, and you're just like, ugh. Beautiful.
Yeah. I can see that. It makes me think of. I feel like there's something you can bite into that's similar to that is very like I have to think about it, like what kind of food or something would be similar to. It's what I'm trying to think of. It reminds me of like the texture of it. But okay. I want to ask you other stuff.
Like
Okay.
tiramisu, that's like, it's like that soft, like tiramisu like has that kind of soft powdery chocolate on top that like break into, and it's like really solid.
Yeah.
That's like, it's like a good stone analogy for food, I feel like.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, if I remember what I'm talking about, I'll like tell you on Instagram or email you when I email you the link to the episode on Monday. Okay. So after having learned what lithography printmaking entails, why did you stick with it? Because it's like, I mean, there seems to be things that are, practically obstacles. It's like you need a lot of space. You need a whole printmaking, the thing with the wheel that you press. You need to prepare ink, and you need to buy the ink, and you have to have all these stones that they're so heavy, and the paper, and the rack where you put your prints. I mean, you don't strictly need all of those things, I suppose. Like one can make do with, like, if you can put it on the floor, for example, the prints. Even though maybe you don't want to do that. I'm just saying, like if you don't have the stuff but you're must print. I mean, I'm just saying, like why did you stick with printmaking even though it has like these arguable obstacles? Like what do you think? Why do you think you have stuck with it in spite of all of these things for so long? Also,
I guess it goes back to when we graduated from the academy. So here's a funny story. So we graduated from the academy, and I realized that I was a really bad artist. And yeah, I knew. I just hear me out.
okay.
I'm a bad artist in that I just didn't have the drive to make my own work. So I was like, I'm not interested in doing stuff for anybody but myself. And I was tired of justifying what I was making for other people. And I feel like when I was at the academy, you might remember I was doing like a lot of sewing and quilting and stuff like that. I feel like I got like some raised eyebrows at that because I was like taking my embroidery to the figure drawing class and embroidering the figure, and people were just like, why? But I just like, I came out of the academy and like I finished that body of work for the thesis, and I was like, I'm a terrible artist. I just like, technically I can draw, I can do whatever I want, but I'm tired of explaining myself to people. And about that time, John Jacobsmeyer invited me to come do a print for Will Cotton, who's like a senior critic at the Academy. And then I realized in doing that print, and then I also did a print for Leslie Dill. So in doing those two prints, I realized it was more exciting for me to print for somebody else. and see their image from start to finish
Mm.
than it was for me to sit down at the stone and be like, I have to come up with an image. And so I
Mm.
think that's why I did end up sticking with printmaking, because I knew that, well, I knew about Tamarind Institute, but I didn't quite understand like collaborative printmaking like I do now. Um, and I think it was like John Volk who like sat down with me and was like, have you considered this as a career? And I was like, no. And he was like, you should look into it. And really, like, it was all these kind of factors, like playing very small roles, but not me realizing what was going on.
Mm.
And then it was like it all culminated in this like really bad experience when I was working at Michael's and I was super depressed. And um, Rachel Birkenthal and Jess Leo and Eric Von Hassling, they were all my friends in Staten Island and graduated with us from the academy. Like they sat down with me and like had an intervention, and they were like, we can see you're depressed. What can we do to help?
Mm.
And, you know, like that kind of kicked my ass. And it was like, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? And so it was like that conversation, all these collaborative projects, all these things kind of like in tandem with each other. I was like, how do I take what I know to the next level? And that was Tamarind. And so I stuck with it because I loved what I was doing in New York, but I couldn't figure out how to make it work in New York. And so I left and I went to Tamarind, which is in Albuquerque, and I did the printer training program. So it's a year-long program. First 4 months you spend learning like all the technical stuff, but you're collaborating with like your peers and stuff like that. And then the final 4 months you're collaborating with grad students from the University of New Mexico. And then my class was the first one that we had professional artists. So then you're like really collaborating. And in that 8 month span that I was in at Tamarind, I was like, this is why I print. This is why I love printmaking. This is what my purpose is in life. I'm like, I think that's why I stuck with it. Cause like I truly believe like this is why my role in the art world, it's not to be an artist. It's to be a collaborative printer and a printmaker and to like work with artists and work with people. And I've, yeah, so I love it for that reason. And I would never give anything up. And it's why I've like, I got my litho press for free, and I got it by taking a red eye from Albuquerque to Atlanta, and then driving Atlanta to North Carolina, picked up a press, and then drove 2 days back to Albuquerque. I mean, like, I do it because I love it, and I'm like absolutely just like, and I'm crazy and passionate about it. So as you can probably tell, like I'm a little bit crazy. So, but
Okay. Um, what I'm not quite sure I understand what is collaborative printmaking. Like, what is that? What does that mean?
so basically, like, and say you have an idea, like you wanted to have one of your drawings turned into a print. So you could approach me and then we could print it together. So basically what you would come to my studio, you draw on the stone or the plate, and then we'd go through a series of trial proofs. And then once we agree on a trial proof, then I'll edition the print for you. And so collaboration is really like kind of working with an artist to see their ideas in print form. And it's really fun. I've done a lot of cool projects. I worked with a lot of artists at Tamarind, and then as I've gone back and I've set up my own shop, I've been like really like looking for artists who aren't technically like academic artists. So
Aren't?
yeah, I've been like looking for, because like I'm from the South. I'm steeped in Southern tradition, and there's like a lot of craft culture here. So my interest is really kind of working with craft people. And so like my friend Kevin Zollinger makes banjos, and he approached me and was like, how do we take what you do and turn into a banjo? And I was like, I have no idea. But we sat down and we like really worked on it, and it ended up being like a woodcut relief plus a lithograph in the drum of the banjo head. And it's like really, it turned out really good. And I mean, I think I enjoy the challenge of people just coming to me and being like, here's my idea, like how do I turn that to a print? So for me, that's kind of that's like what collaboration is like for me. And it's really hoping that the artist like kind of walks away with something that they can take back to their studio. Maybe it's like maybe like we print something in color and they're like, I've never thought of using that color in my work before, and now I'm going to go try it as a paint or something. You're just like, yeah. And then for me, I just get to print, so that's the best part.
Okay. Okay, but then all right, so then why did you think you were a bad artist before? I mean, was it having to explain the work or what your work was about to other people? I mean, why and if so, why does having to explain your work to other people make you a bad artist?
I I think most of my work is like steeped in nostalgia. And so
Mhm.
like a lot of the stuff I was doing was like my personal history.
Right.
And I just got kind of tired of justifying being like trying to come up with an academic way of saying nostalgia. I
Mhm.
just want to be like, hey, it's nostalgia. Or I just want to be like, you know what? I really love Dolly Parton, and I'm gonna draw a picture of Dolly Parton. And
Mhm.
y'all can just like take a long walk off a short pier and that'll be
Uh-huh.
it. But I always felt like I had to justify it and be like, yes, the juxtaposition of being from the South with the patron saint Dolly Parton and blah blah.
Mhm.
And I was just like, I'm so tired. Just like let me just tell you that I want to draw a picture of Dolly Parton and be fine with it.
Mhm.
Or
Mhm.
like I want to do a quilt about beer and like please just let me do that. I
Mhm.
don't know. I always felt like I had to have some sort of justification for doing what I wanted to do. And I think as soon as I left grad school and I sat down, I was like, I don't care anymore. No, like, I'm not going to get a grade on anything. I'm just going to make whatever I want. And that was like the most freeing feeling. And then I just was like, here's a Dolly Parton print, and here's another Dolly Parton print,
Mhm.
and here's like five prints about jackalopes. And it's the same jackalope I've just drawn four different times. And then this one's a little different. I don't know. I just felt this freedom.
Mhm.
Um, I also tell people I'm a bathroom artist.
Bathroom?
Yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of times I'll give people art and then they'll text me like, hey, guess where I put your work? I'm like, oh, where? And they're like, send me pictures like above their toilet.
All right.
I had a self-portrait I did and I gave it to my brother and he put it above his toilet. And I was like, why did you put it in the bathroom? He goes, that way I can pray to you every time I take a piss. And I was like, also, I'm like kind of flattered that I end up in
Mhm.
some people's bathrooms because like, sometimes like that's a good thinking spot.
Yeah, sure. Okay. I guess I still don't understand why you called yourself a bad artist.
I mean, like I said, I was tired of giving justification for what I was doing, but
So it wasn't about the work itself. You liked the work itself.
that's subjective. I guess like I guess I was enjoying what I was doing
Mm-hmm.
because I was working in litho. I was like really kind of like figuring stuff out in lithography and I was experimenting, but like the imagery, I feel like, like our peers around us, like everybody always had like strong conceptual ideas. And I was just
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm gonna draw whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
then I felt like whatever I was drawing, then I had to justify why I was doing it. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I just wanted to draw something to put it on a stone to see if I could print in like a two-color lithograph.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I guess that's why I think I'm a bad artist. I just like,
Because you feel like you couldn't justify, because you didn't want to justify the work.
yeah, I just like, I didn't want to just like, I didn't want to give some sort of academic excuse for why I was making things.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
I don't know. And also like, like I said, at 19, when I was in that Italio class, I was like, I'm going to be a New York artist.
Mm-hmm.
I remember showing up in New York at 23 and being like, I'm going to galleries and get representation, and gallery shows are the way to be an artist and all this other stuff. And I think like I was like really young and naive, and I thought that in order to be part of the art world, you had to be an artist.
Mm.
And like I said, like now I think my role as a printmaker and a collaborative printer, like that fulfills my want to be part of the art world without having to go through like applying for gallery shows or
Mm.
like making work that I have to justify. And for me, I feel more rewarded out of what I do when it comes to art making um, than I did before. I felt like by the time I graduated from academy, I was pretty burnt out. I was just like, honestly, I think it's really important that we should talk about mental health with the arts.
About
I
what?
think mental health.
Mm.
I think there's like this trope of like, like there's a starving artist and whatever,
Right.
but there's also like the suffering artist
Mm-hmm.
and the brooding artist. When I lived in New York, I was depressed. I was I was physically drained. I was mentally drained. I was financially drained. I was at the end of my rope, and I wasn't sure like how you. I was like, if I want to be an artist, I couldn't fulfill it. I couldn't fulfill like my idea of what I thought the artist was supposed to be.
Mm.
And really, once I moved away from the city, I was like happier.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like this depression kind of lifted off. But I feel like, we don't spend enough time talking about like the mental health and then like your creativity because as I was depressed and living in Staten Island, I wasn't making anything.
Mm.
I think it went like 2 years that I lived in Staten Island. I made like three or four things,
Mm.
and I think having a good mental state is really important. And so like now like I have a studio that I get to come to and I get to work with artists and I'm like a lot happier because I'm not suffering from like 2 hour commutes and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and like paying, god awful amount of money on a shoebox of an apartment.
Yep.
So
Matchbox.
yeah, Matchbox. Really,
Smaller
I
still.
mean, it is. But I think for me, it just was like getting out and having like getting away from the city. And it was like me at 23 being like really naive about what New York was, and me at 27 realizing what New York was.
Mm.
And that was really important for me in my
Yep.
artistic or, career
Mm.
and
Okay.
figuring all that stuff out. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I think the whole thing about being an artist and what does it mean to be an artist, and you having started with the, I don't know, the collective idea of what it is to be an artist, or like the maybe the stereotype of what it is to be an artist, or just like whatever idea one receives, quote unquote, kind of from the ether, whatever it is, like whatever's in magazines or movies or whatever. Like, I mean, including the suffering artist, including the starving artist, including the dissipated, drunk, promiscuous artist
yeah.
that makes unbelievable work or whatever. Like all of these stereotypes, I think, I mean, I'm inclined to agree with you in the sense that, one starts with an idea of maybe, I don't know, like making stuff,
Mhm.
perhaps. Like, oh no, I want to make images and whatever it is, I want to make this stuff. And so I guess I have to go to New York and show in New York, because that's also like a part of a stereotype of being an artist, like the New York artist, because like New York is one of the cradles of art, modern art, or hubs of art, and then finding that perhaps the generalized accept idea of a successful artist maybe doesn't entirely fit you,
Mhm.
or you're not crazy about it. And I mean, I'm just like musing about this because I totally also, I mean, that happens to me as well. It's like, I haven't been showing. I don't know if I want a solo show. I don't know if I am interested, not just want, but interested in, like, do I want to make the effort? It's like, I'm like real, because for example, like the way that I work, I'm like super scattered. It's like I was able to focus on an idea for the thesis, at the academy. But then since then it's been like, I just want to draw other shit. I just want to draw other things about
Yeah.
other things. It's like I want to draw a bug, I want to draw a head, I want to draw a vertebra, like I want to draw whatever I want to draw. And unfortunately, it's like a trade-off, kind of, because for whatever reason, like it doesn't, it's like an idea of what idea of artist works for me, and it doesn't, and like accepting that it doesn't have to be exactly the same as the collective perceived idea of a
Mhm.
successful artist. And also, like the thing, what you were saying about talking about your work. I mean, I don't know. I still kind of feel, like I can understand being irritated with having to justify the work via an explanation, because because that is also part of like the stereotypical postmodern artist that just takes trash and justifies the work with art talk. It's like, not that that's what you were doing. I'm just saying that I can understand being annoyed by having to kind of imitate that in a way or behave that way. And it's like, my work, like, it's like, it doesn't have to be deep.
Yeah.
you know
Well, I mean, that's the thing is like, I feel like there's this academic idea that you have to, it's like, you have to write something about like why you make it. And sometimes
mm,
like you just make something because you really want to make it and
mm,
you shouldn't have to justify it.
mm,
But I feel like when you go to art school, sometimes like they're like, you have to have a justification for everything you do.
Mm.
And it's like, sometimes there is no justification. Sometimes it's just, like I said, Dolly Parton. Who doesn't want to draw Dolly
Yeah.
Parton?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I guess I have kind of two feelings about that because I don't care for the art talk. You know, like, oh, like you were saying, like the term you were saying, the juxtaposition of society with the universe, blah, blah, like this freaking masturbatory, self-congratulatory bullshit. I mean, you know, like, oh my god, big words, phenomenology, oh, I mean, it's like, all right, well, you know, big words, congratulations. It's like, you know, it's like a mixture of things because I also, it's a mixture of like, well, it's like I don't want to talk about my work that way,
Yeah.
like when I do it. But at the same time, I do think it's important for a person to be capable of doing it if necessary. It's like I don't think it's necessary to justify the work all the time, but because it's like, you know, I don't know, and I don't know. I do feel like sometimes at least it is necessary. I mean, I guess it's just that I learned the skill of being able to talk about my work at the academy, not in art speak necessarily, but just I was like, oh, because before I almost refused to talk about my work because I was like, yeah, the mystery is what makes it whatever, you know. And I felt like talking about it was somehow going to ruin it or something, the work for me. And it was just like, really, I didn't know what to say, or I was afraid to talk about it, and I was afraid to dig in more, you know. So, I don't know, it's like a balance, kind of, in a way. For me, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I will say this about the art speak and like getting that. I was at a collaboration when I was at Tamron, and the artist was like kind of picky, and we kind of struggled. We usually get about 2 weeks for a collaboration. So we're like day 9 pulling proofs, and they're not happy. We haven't pulled anything that they like. And so there was a confusion, and I was mixing ink, and I mixed the wrong ink. So I printed it, and it kind of changed the print. So like I pulled the proof, put the proof up in the artist studio, and the artist looks at it, and they're like, I'm not sure. They're like, I think it needs one more print. And I was sitting there, and I was like, do you know about atmospheric perspective? And they looked at me, and they're like, yeah. And I was like, things that are like farther in the background are a little bit lighter compared to things that are, you know, closer to the foreground. I said, if you look at your image, you have these two objects, and like this one's a little darker, that one's a little lighter. I was like, you don't need that fifth plate. Like, we got it in 4. I was like, it's like atmospheric perspective. You can really feel the depth. And the artist kind of stood there. The artist was like looking at it, and they go, okay, this one's done. And I walked out the studio, and Valkyrie was like,
Nice.
And I mean, it's just like, I can pull it out when I have to, and I love, I in ways I do love it. It's a love-hate relationship. Like, I don't mind it when I hear justification for it, but at the same time, I'm also like, if I go to a gallery, the last thing I do is look at the artist statement. I'm not interested. I would rather just like look at the work and let the work speak for itself. So.
Yep. Okay. All right. So then, okay, Mr. Ingram, we must move ahead. What is art in your opinion?
After saying all that, I will say this: art is anything and everything. Which you're just probably like, wait, after saying how much you hate art speak, you're saying that art can be anything and everything. So I think for me, have you ever read The Little Prince or seen the movie The Little Prince?
I've read it.
You've read it? You know, like, he draws the picture of the snake, and he like shows the people, he's like, look, it's a snake, and they're like, that's a lovely hat.
Yeah.
And you're just like, and he's like, no, it's a snake, and he draws the elephant in it, and you're still like, no, it's a great hat. And then it's like, if somebody says something's art, then it's art. Just leave it at that. And I feel like there's this, like, again, it goes back to academics, and it's like there's this weird gatekeeping that somebody somewhere along the way was like, that's art, that's not. And it stems back to somebody in academics who was like, this is what it's going to be, and this is what it's not going to be. And I feel like because of that gatekeeping, so many people who are like creative individuals get crushed at an early age. They either get crushed, or it's like they have like an experience in undergrad and then they get crushed there. And it's like, they just want to quit art because like there's like these gatekeepers about what art is. And it's not our job. It's not our job to gatekeep like who's going to be in art and who's not, and who's going to get a gallery show and who's not going to get a gallery show. Like, you should be creative, and if you say it's art, then it's art. That's my personal take on it. I mean, I'll probably get crucified on that, but that's how I feel.
Um,
I
but
get tired of people telling me like, they're like, I can't even draw a stick figure. And I'm like, well, of course you can. Somebody along the way told you that you couldn't. And why would they do that? Because they had something up somewhere along the way. Somebody told them that they couldn't draw a stick figure.
mhm,
Like, just quit this shit. Let people be creative.
yeah. Um, I guess but I guess I also don't see like the relationship between a person wanting to be creative and thinking of what art might be. Um, I guess because it's like, other crafts or whatever, other activities have their delimitation. It's like, a neurosurgeon stops somewhere,
Yeah.
for example, or a teacher stops somewhere. So then I wonder why there is no delimitation around what art can be. I mean,
There is.
because in that case, it's like, why don't you do absolutely anything else other than printmaking? It's like,
But you already said the word, and the word is craft. At some point, somewhere down the line, somebody was like, sewing isn't art, sewing is craft. And that
okay,
delineation between elevating painting to fine art or whatever and taking sewing and putting it down here as craft because
mm-hmm,
it's function,
mm-hmm,
that's like why I'm saying like creativity and there's that gatekeeping because sewing can totally be fine art.
sure,
There's just somewhere along the line this gatekeeping happened and somebody was like push things in certain directions and then that's what happened.
mm-hmm,
And so it's like when somebody says I like to sew or like I think about my mom, she makes scrapbooks.
mm-hmm,
They're beautiful scrapbooks,
mm-hmm,
but she only thinks of it as craft. But if you look at them, I mean, the way she is like thinking about color relationships and the aesthetics, I mean, it's art. It
mm-hmm,
really is. And it's like, but somewhere along the line, somebody's like, no, because it's like on paper and it's like collaging and with glue and stuff like that's going to be a craft.
mm-hmm,
And the same thing with like quilters and like that's why I love quilting.
mm-hmm,
And then somebody's like, your craft material. It's not craft material, it's a material.
mm-hmm.
But like I said, some group of people somewhere long ago was like, this is what's going to be fine art and this is what's going to be craft. And I think right now, what I'm really enjoying about the art world is that we're seeing this, like, sort of people like starting to break down these boundaries. Like, so you got like Kerry James Marshall, who's like using glitter in his paintings, and you have like Sanford Biggers, who's like taking quilts and like kind of working quilts into paints. And these artists are out there like kind of starting to break down these barriers. And if you like really kind of look at the work that's being made, you're seeing a lot of harkening back to you know craft material and using it in fine art. But we're more accepting of it now. So I don't know.
Okay,
It's
so
just,
then, sorry, go ahead.
no. I just like I said, I think unfortunately for me, I see a lot of people who are creative and they're just told that they can't be artists or what they make is not art. And it's because it's not traditionally termed as fine art. And I think for me that's infuriating and aggravating.
Mm-hmm. But then what is craft?
Oh, well, at this point, I mean, it's almost basically art. But I mean, if you think about craft, I mean, craft is the same thing as art. It takes time to like perfect, your medium.
Uh-huh.
And it's really what it boils down to is materials. So
Okay.
it's like people who like make brooms. Like there's nothing wrong with broom making, but
Mm-hmm.
because we don't put it in a gallery, therefore it's craft instead of fine art. But have you seen like some of the stuff like people make as like brooms?
Mm-hmm.
It's like incredible. And it takes a lot of skill and time to like learn these processes. But I mean, ceramics started out as craft, printmaking started out as craft. I guarantee drawing and painting started out craft. At
Mm-hmm.
some point, somebody down the line was like, painting's now fine art, quilting is craft.
Mm-hmm.
Who made that decision? You gotta, I mean, you'd have to trace it back. But like,
Okay, but I'm not sure I understand. I'm not sure I understand why that means that anything can be art.
I
or that
mean,
everything is art.
I mean,
Because it's
everything.
like, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, because everything is art. It takes. I mean, what is the difference between somebody who makes brooms and somebody who makes paintings? They're both labors of love. They've both really honed their skills and technique. They've thought about how they're going to make it. The only difference between those two things, you know, oil paints versus, wheat or whatever, sticks and stuff that go into making a broom. I mean, it literally just comes down to the material. So it's literally just a gatekeeping thing. Like I said, it's going back to somebody down the line saying, no, what you're doing is not fine art, but it is. It really is, because it's the same amount of time and labor and love that goes into it as an oil painting. It's the same forethought and everything else.
But but I feel like the stuff that you're talking about involves, I mean, what I understand rather, what I understand from what you're saying is that whether it's art or craft,
Yeah.
the object that the person is trying to make requires the person to dedicate time to it. It requires a person to practice.
Yeah.
What you said, about honing your skill, to make it better or to polish whatever it is that you're trying to, the output that you're trying to put, that you want of the object that you want to make.
Yeah.
It requires, the persistence of the person. Like the drive of the person. I want to get better at this. I want to be able to do this or whatever. And I feel like that is gatekeeping, in the sense that a person can't declare I'm an artist and then not make anything. It's like, I feel like that is to some degree, because I agree with you in that sense. It's like, I don't like, it's like, all right, I don't know what art is, okay? That's why I'm asking people. But I think that art involves, at the very least, making something, meaning that you, the person, whoever the artist, has to physically make the thing. Whatever material, perhaps the same as you, whatever material you're using, but you have to take the thing and then put it together, make some kind of change to it, interfere with it somehow, and make it to something that you want to see. You want to, there's some thought process there, because you're making decisions along the way of the thing that you're making. Okay. And I feel, to me, in a way, or, for me personally, at least, I think that we agree at least that far into what it is to be either an artist or a crafts person, that there's this procedure of making something, but then there's also like the innards, quote unquote, of the person, because they have the drive, they have the desire, they have these thoughts that they're putting, the thought process that goes into making the work. And I feel like, or again, in my opinion, that is gatekeeping, because it's like, I do not like thoughtless, sarcastic, ironic, postmodern, meaningless shit that was just like picked up off the street and declared art, as in like, God, I declare the daylight. It's like, no. Yeah. It's like, for me, in my opinion, that kind of stuff is not art, because it's like, I just don't. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I'm still okay with that. I'm still okay with somebody using found objects. And let me tell you about this conceptual piece, and I think you're going to be, maybe hopefully it changes your mind. So there's a conceptual piece by an artist named Tom Marioni, and the piece is called Free Beer. Drinking beer with friends, or the act of drinking beer with friends, is the highest form of art. And for 1 year, he invited people, I think like every Friday night, you go down, you can have a beer with him, and you're just like engaging your community. And like, that's like the most amazing thing. Isn't that what art is about? Engaging people? And all he was doing was drinking a beer with his friends. And they were probably talking about art. They might have been talking about the weather. But you have this community that you're like really working with. And so like, there's no physical piece, there's no whatever. It's all conceptual. I think there's a refrigerator in the San Francisco MoMA. But like, that's totally art. Why not? Who's to say it's not? I mean, he can justify it. He can give the art speak that I couldn't and that I didn't want to. And maybe that's what makes him an artist. maybe that's what makes it art. I think if you can justify what you do and why you make it, and even if it's just like picking something up off the ground and being like, hey, this is art, then that's okay. I think that goes back to the Little Prince. It's like when those adults are like, no, that's a hat. And you're like, the kid's like, no, it's a snake. It's like, who are these adults to say that that's not art? Who are we to say, Tom Marioni drinking beer with friends is not art? Who's to say the broom maker down the studio over here is not making art? Who's to say the painter, in the other studio over there is not making art? Nobody. We should be supporting each other. We should be a community. I think that's honestly, that's why I love printmaking, because like printmaking's great. I've followed people on Instagram I've never met, and you meet somebody and you just start talking about prints, but you have this instant community. And I think, too, like sometimes I always like felt like we didn't have that. I didn't have that as a drafts person. I had that community because I was in the print shop, but there's something about printmaking and ceramics and quilting, and it's like all the stuff that people are kind of down on in craft material. Like, you have a community. I don't know. That's just my 2 cents. I mean, I understand where you're coming from and the frustration about found objects and Duchamp and the ready-mades and stuff like that, but
It's just that, I mean, if anything, they're the ones, it's like that's where the actual breaking down of the things that you're talking about started. So it's like, that's not new. It's like things being broken down in like in terms of what is art or whatever. It's like, that's not new. I mean, they started it way back then.
I would agree, but like I think even before Duchamp and the ready-mades and stuff like that, I think this idea of like craft versus fine art, like that was already existed.
Sure. Yeah, that's old.
It's an old thing, and it's like printmaking started, engraving was for like armor and stuff like that, and then it slowly, like through the Gutenberg Bible and stuff like that, like that's how it became a fine art, because people were using movable type, and it went from that to making fine art, and then it's like lithographs for reproductions. But like printmaking was commercial, and we totally turned it into something else, and we've elevated it. At some point, somebody down the line was like, printmaking is now fine art, and we're like, okay. And we just kind of accepted it. And I think for me, like, what is art? That's why I say everything can be art, as long as the person making it is passionate about it and can justify it. Why not? I don't know. I'm a big softie.
What?
I'm a big softie. I just like, I don't know. I feel like this world is already so negative. Like, can't we just, like, why do we have to like push some group of people out? I mean, it's like, yeah. Put everybody in.
Okay. All right. So we're running out of time. And I have another question. Mr. Ingram, what is beauty in your opinion?
I would say the same thing. Beauty is anything and everything. I think a lot of people, everybody has their own aesthetic. Everybody has their own, what they like best and stuff like that. But I mean, it can be anything that you find attractive. I don't think there's any wrong answer to that. I'll tell you again, throw out something else. So there's a print by Bruce Conner done at Tamron Institute in 1965, and it's a 29 by 41 sheet of paper. I think it's reused VFK. And it's
29 by what?
41. It's a mother sheet, so it's like a full sheet uncut from the mill. And it's this beautiful thumbprint in the like top middle thing. And you're like, how is that like a beautiful piece of art? Because it's like a thumbprint on a piece of paper. But it's kind of like the knowing what went into that lithograph. So a printer had to get a stone that was larger than 29 inches by 41 inches, grain it to that 220 grit, a beautiful, beautiful finish. And then all he did was go in, and it's just like this commentary on printmaking and like the cleanliness of like having a perfect sheet. And it's just like one of the best prints. You should totally look it up. And it's just like fascinating. And again, it's super conceptual. So maybe, I don't know. I love it. I mean,
yeah, it seems like a bit contradicting that you would want to like straight a 180 be like, I like Dolly Parton, I'm going to draw her and that's it. Where this guy has like this whole ass postmodernist thing with it, that it's for my taste, I think that's more going on being impressive and shocking, like Duchamp style, rather than other stuff.
I will say it's 180 in that for my work personally, like what I do as an artist. And I, like I said, I
Sure.
use the term kind of loosely because I don't really feel like an artist these days. I don't want to justify what I make, but if somebody can come to me and tell me why that print is beautiful, I understand. And like for me, like I understand also the technical challenges of what it's like to print a thumbprint. Crazy hard thing to do. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I just like if somebody else can explain it and say this is art and they can tell me why, I'm okay with that. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't want to tell people. I just want to draw Dolly Parton,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
All right. Well, that's fair, Mr. Ingram. Okay. Well. Okay. Well, in that case, let's start closing it out there because the hour is also almost up. We are at 54 minutes, and I don't want to like take over your entire day or anything. I know you said you don't have anything in particular else to do, but I don't know. It seems invasive and disrespectful. Okay, this is a good place to end the episode. Jake, please tell our viewers and listeners what you're up to lately and where your work can be found, or anything that you're excited about. I would like it if, you know, not your boss or anything, but if you talked about your studio, your collaborative printmaking studio,
Yeah.
and whatever else you want.
Um, so like I said, I do have my own studio. It's Jackalope Editions, like rabbits with antlers. And I'm printing for different artists. So right now in the studio, I just had Richard Gannan the fourth. So I'm getting ready to edition 2 prints from him. Josh McDonald's also working on 2 prints. Aaron Noble finished a residency, 2 prints, and I got working on him and working with Tatiana Potts, Dr. Maggie Conley, Eric Sherwood. And then next week, or in 2 weeks, I've got an artist from Tampa coming up. Also working on the banjos, more banjo projects. You can
With the
find
same
my
banjo person you told me earlier?
same banjo
Nice.
from Zollinger Banjo Craft. You can find all that information at on Instagram, Jackalope Editions or jackalopeeditions.com. Personally, I'm actually co-artist in residence at my studio. So my litho studio is in a ceramic studio. It's Mighty Mud here in Knoxville. And so I'm really kind of taking this opportunity to see how I can take what I know in printmaking and see what I can apply to ceramics. And so far I've been having a really good time learning about the science and chemistry behind ceramics. And there's actually a lot of parallels between that and printmaking. So
Oh, so you're starting some kind of journey with ceramics then?
yeah, my goal was really to like start working with artists here. And I co-wrote a grant application last year with Dr. Maggie Conley, whose print I just released last week. And we have been developing, with the help of Alyssa Ebinger, who is a printer over at Flatbed Press in Austin, lithographic ceramic decal. It's a way to transfer your image from lithographs onto ceramics. So I'm going to kind of keep practicing with that, and then I'm going to teach myself silkscreen, and then hopefully be able to offer silkscreen stuff for future artists and stuff like that. So.
All right, that sounds really awesome. And the thing about putting lithography images onto ceramics sounds really interesting.
It's a really cool process, and Alyssa did a lot of work when she was at Tamron. And so through the grant last year, we were able to bring her out and have her show us her technique. And so we learned a lot, and then we were able to do that as a class here at the studio. So
Nice. All right. Well, that's awesome. Thank you very much, Jake, for joining me. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your words and your thoughts. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Feel free to let Jake and I know what you think of this conversation in the comments section. Also, I invite you to subscribe to my audiovisual channel because more of these conversations are coming. I also invite you to like this video and share it with any and all pertinent individuals. If you want to support Jake, myself, this podcast, or all three, the links will be in the show notes. So see you next time, everyone, and thank you very much. Bye.